Actually, can we go from jump? Because
where from?
You mean just let's do it all over again?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because that felt like
it felt because the thing was I was off the second. I was like, I can't hear the music.
Yeah, you got thrown. I got thrown because you got thrown, and I was like, and then and then also I have a thing that I want to do when we say we have no guests.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We good? Okay.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Creativity in progress.
Hello and welcome to Creativity in Progress, where we talk about creativity in a podcast. My name is Nathan Beatty, and here with me I have
Ethan Murphy, Nathan Beatty's friend.
Hey Ethan, how you doing today?
I'm Batman. I'm Bruce Wayne. Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. You can cut all that out just for reasons, obviously.
Yes, we don't want people to know your true identity.
No, of course not. Anywho, moving on. Nate, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing quite well. I'm feeling a little bit more confident this time around asking you this question.
And the best part is, I don't know if the listeners will know why Nate and I are sounding different, or if we will sound different at all. I guess it won't be. It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Long story short, Nate and I have we have fun. We have fun behind the scenes, and that fun comes at a cost.
Yes. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. We, this is, all I got to say is at least the first go at it that we had was only like a minute. And it wasn't like we got to the end of the episode and we were like, I forgot to hit record.
No.
It wasn't anything like that.
No.
But also we kind of don't know what to do with ourselves because we don't have any guests. I know, so sad. I'm so sad. Okay, enough of that music.
We brought in a nice seasoned musician from the Philharmonic, and we sat him here the whole time, and we cut him off immediately.
Oh yeah, just cut him off. But he'll get played. It's fine.
He'll get played. He just got played in more ways than one. And no, we don't validate parking.
Yeah, you'll get paid in exposure. Anyway,
now play the song for him again.
Yes,
there we go. Poor bastard.
Oh my God.
Gracious.
What are we doing with our lives? Anyway.
As we see the wife upstairs saying nothing, absolutely nothing.
Just shaking her head, just like, oh my God. What did I marry? Anyway, so we don't have a guest today, but we figured, might as well get a little bit back to our roots, talk about just you and me, chatting about
me and you,
chatting about, because we've actually just done a whole hell of a lot of Avengers Endgame stuff.
Yes.
And I hope we didn't scare away too many listeners.
I know we scared up at least a few.
Yeah, we got a few. There were a couple where I was like, I think, I know some of our listeners are really going to enjoy this part. Excuse me, but I know that there were going to be some listeners who were aren't as interested in it.
Tons.
And be like, we really could care less.
Yes.
And we love those listeners too.
Oh, of course.
We may not understand them, but we love them.
Yes.
But I will say it was funny. My sister listened to the spoiler episode, the one where, not the spoiler episode, the one before that when we were guessing stuff.
Sid.
Yeah, the one with Sid. And she was like, you got everything wrong. You just... I think the only prediction we got right was one of you guys predicted that they would have, I think it was Sid, predicted that they would have Hulk and Banner togetger.
Oh, Professor Hulk.
Yeah, they would have Professor Hulk, and they did.
And they actually did.
That was the only thing we got right.
Right. And in all fairness, there's two things real quick. One, we didn't make that many predictions because digressing is a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
And we would have to stop digressing in order to do that. And we refuse.
What kind of life is that?
Exactly. And number two is, you mentioned the way you started that whole diatribe off is by saying, we know we talked a lot of Avengers Endgame stuff, and we won't do it this time. And then you went into a diatribe about it. Of course. So I blame you, sister, for that for some reason. So thanks, Nate's sister.
Yes, well, she'll now be getting a message for that.
And the bill. Fine.
Oh, thank you. Anyway.
So what Nate and I decided we would do today in honor of Nate's sister for some reason, we would go ahead and do finales, because obviously we've had the whole Avengers after all their movies, 22 movies and whatnot. They had a big old finale. And right now, it's probably, this will air on like the Tuesday night. It'll be 2 days after Game of Thrones had their series finale as well.
Yeah.
And so it seems apropos, if that's German for appropriate, I think.
Yeah.
It seemed like the right time for us to talk about finales, not just with movies or with TV, with all kinds of things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think like because like you said, Avengers just finished their big, despite the fact that they dropped the Spider-Man trailer and they're like, we're back at it.
Yes. Yeah.
But like you said, with Game of Thrones, which that's getting, we're recording this the night after the Bells episode.
Yes. Even you know that. And
even I know that, because it's getting to the point now where it is just like inundated, like my like all feeds of anything I'm looking at is like, what happened in the Bells, and at this point I'm like, well, screw it, I'm just gonna read what happened.
Might as well.
But yeah, and the warden is really into it now. She actually
watches it.
Yeah.
Okay.
She binged. Well, she found out that because we have HBO now.
Oh, HBO Go.
Yeah,
HBO Go.
Yeah, the one that you don't have to be connected to cable to have. Yeah. We have that, and she was like, you know what, I'm gonna look into this, and like not even a month ago, like maybe 3 weeks ago, she started binging Game of Thrones, and she binged the entire series to catch up.
So here's the math of that. I believe it is literally 72. Approximately 72 episodes or so. And maybe that's including this season. Okay. Which means that's approximately 72 plus hours. Now, that means that she managed to get that much TV into her eyeballs. And it's not just regular TV. This is, I mean, I know the whole slogan is not TV, it's HBO, but also it's like rated X level incest and death and gruesomeness HBO. So to have that much bombarding her brain and her soul over that short period of time, whew, Poor warden.
Yep, there's a reason I love her. Anyway, yeah. Well, a lot of it was I would see her. She would be in, like, she'd either be in the car or she'd be, sitting in the thing with her iPhone and earbuds in, and she would just be staring at the thing. And every now and again, she would go, and I would go, Red Wedding, and she would go,
That's what's fascinating too, is because you know so much about the show, even though you refuse to watch even a second of it.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like. It's like serial killers. Okay.
Good night, everybody. I'm going to walk out of this room very slowly.
So I have an interest. Now, I'm not a big fan of horror, not a big fan of gore. I'm not that.
Except for Dexter. You do love Dexter.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. I'm fascinated by serial killers. I don't look at crime scene photos or anything like that, but I'm just fascinated at how, because it's somebody who thinks so differently from me, I'm curious as to why.
Yes.
And so I've read a lot about them. I've read, and that's why I really like Dexter. Sure. I thought it was very interesting. And I think this is kind of the same thing with Game of Thrones, where it's like I'm fascinated by what they're trying to tell, but I don't necessarily want to experience it in full.
I see. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and it's kind of, and I do the same thing with horror movies as well. Like if I hear about a horror movie that I'm like, okay, I've got to read, and I'll go on the Wikipedia page and read the plot, outline.
Right.
And to me that's fine. That's enough. Sure. Like there are some times though, like I read it and I'm like, why did I do that to myself?
Yeah, even by proxy sometimes it's too much. Like the horror movie Martyrs. I'm not sure if you heard of that one or saw that or read about Martyrs. But long story short, it's a movie that's extreme, and I just said it was probably too much for me to actually view. But I went ahead and read what actually happened. I was like, yeah, that's definitely a miss. Yeah. But I think so. I have a theory. Speaking of Reddit, there's a Nate Beatty Reddit post. It's a whole forum that's pretty much about people understanding Nate Beatty's brain and psyche and his goatee. And the prevailing theory is, one that I posted myself, is that Nate is really into the psychology of characters. Yeah. So much so that people that like, Dexter or even Sherlock. You're a big fan of Sherlock as well. And also Blanche. These characters who have all kinds of psychoses, it fascinates you to no end, which is why you are invested in the characters more so than even than the deeds. You're invested in how the characters think. Yeah. And I get that too. And that's what's fun about Game of Thrones, especially in the last episode. I won't get into spoilers or whatnot, but it's just the idea that basically one of the characters we've been with since more or less the beginning ended up having a massive negative character arc.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because no one really saw it coming. Yeah. And it's like, for example, with Breaking Bad. Now, I can't remember. Have you seen that? You're familiar with that show? Okay.
Yeah, that's a show I saw and loved.
Right. And that's some very, very dark stuff.
Yeah, very dark stuff. Yeah, that one, I liked it because it focused... It was kind of like it focused more on the psychology of the character and what was happening
the whole time
with the thing, and then the gory, crazy stuff was kind of happening around it. Right. Where with Game of Thrones, that seems to be more of a it's like, hey, come look at boobies and death,
sure, yeah.
And maybe some vagina and penises.
I don't judge. I don't king shame here. 2019,
no king shame.
But that was the idea. Was that with Breaking Bad, it was pretty clear that you were seeing Walter White, because it's called Breaking Bad. You're watching a seemingly good man descend into madness, descend into evil or whatnot. With this character, I won't name her. Wow, that was a spoiler right there. But this character in Game of Thrones, as she makes her descent into the darker side, is more or less a surprise. For one thing, lots of fans hoped that she would go to the good side, that she'd be a Jedi, she'd be on the light. Yeah. And she pretty much said no. And she didn't just say no, she screamed no. And so there's been a lot of pushback from some fans. It's kind of been divisive. Yeah. Fans like, hey, how dare you do that? It's against character. And the way I see it is, no, it's a negative character arc. She started one place and she went to the other end. Yeah. And that's kind of tied into finales, because that's what finales do. Finales, you hope that a character has some kind of an arc. We talked about it a long time ago with almost half a year ago. Episode 26. We talked about almost a half a year ago with the hero's journey with Goodwill Hunting, or Goodwill in Will Hunting. Damn, words are hard. With Will Hunting in Goodwill Hunting, how he pretty much has more or less a positive character arc. Yeah. And so it's interesting to see a different one, a different type of one over 8 seasons or 8 years with this show. And so it's very finales or endings in general are hard to do, but they are in and of themselves experiments in psychology. How will you react on a psychological level to seeing a character you've been journeying with for so long, seeing how the journey ends or seeing how they end?
Yeah, like I think the interesting thing to me about finales is they're really, especially, and this is especially true for series more than movies, really. And over the maybe it could be true. Like this would apply to Avengers,
a franchise.
Yeah, like an overall setup. But the thing with finales that is difficult is the choices you make with a finale and your characters is going to tick off a portion of your fan base.
Yes.
Which I find interesting, because no matter what you do, like with this character in Game of Thrones, if they had taken this character in either direction, there would have been a portion of the fan base. Now, it sounds like if they had taken this character the other direction, there would have been a smaller portion that would have been upset. But that's just fascinating to me. Like a good example, I think is Breaking Bad, and and I think Breaking Bad is out of the spoiler zone. Yes. I know that there were some people that are upset that Walter White dies at the end, but in my mind, I'm like, there is no other way that could have gone.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. And also at the same time, not to cut you off, you're still very handsome, but Jesse Pinkman's character, in a way, does have a positive character arc. Yeah, and he does live. Spoiler alerts again. So it seemed poetic to me. Yeah, and also the idea that Walter White more or less knowingly sacrificed himself in a way to pretty much Jesse was in that position because of him. Yeah, and then he knowingly went to his death to pretty much save Jesse. Yeah, and before he dies, they do cross eyes, and they, in a way, as best they can, they acknowledge each other and say their goodbyes in their own way, more or less, and make peace with each other, more or less, and that's it. And then you see Jesse riding off happy. The sunset, and Walter White has to die because it's the road he towed, and it's so it makes sense.
Yeah, that was one thing that I loved in that show was the fact that you had like if you graphed it, the characters of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, they both start where Jesse Pinkman is like on the bad side and Walter White's on the good side. Mm-hmm. And then as the show progressed, they just 100%. They like Walter White just goes down and Jesse goes up.
Yes.
And it's fascinating to me. And I think it's because it kind of showed their true nature.
Exactly. That's what it boils down to. Also, is the whole nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
If Jesse had been given a different chance or a different life, he probably would have been a better person. But he really didn't. He did the best he could with what he had, and it wasn't much.
Yeah.
Walter White, his whole life, he more or less had this seed of darkness in him, but he didn't really have an opportunity to let it show or to shine.
Yeah.
And once he did, he really, really relished it.
Oh yeah. Like and they kind of showed that it was like because he did have it. Like he did have a lot of opportunities. In fact, he had plenty of opportunities. Yes. In fact, there was like he could have been part of a tech startup that was akin to like Apple or Google or something.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And he didn't. And he could, but to do it, he would have had to have give in to that darkness.
Yes.
And he didn't want to because he was like, I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to be good. And then he ends up in this like cruddy house with the wife and the kid.
And rage-filled. And the best part about that too is how if you remember the name of that company, it's very on the nose, but in a very fun way. It's called Gray Matters. That was the name of the company.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like he'd rather be either black or white than gray. He can't be middle of the road.
Yeah.
And he ended up, so it's I do remember that. That's a very interesting point you made there.
Yeah. That was just a fascinating show. I really enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't like about it was the first season. The first season.
This is my favorite part of any of the episodes we've done.
I always got to criticize.
Yes.
I always have to criticize. Anyway, the first season, it was fantastic. Sure. But at the end of every episode, I just felt like crap. I was like, man, like I feel like Walter White. Like I'm not doing anything with my life. This is. Wow. And then I didn't feel it for the rest of the series, but for some reason that first season, it's just a little depressing. That first season.
Well, maybe that was deliberate. Maybe that was the whole point. Was they were trying to be like, if you felt like this overwhelming sense of drudgery and malaise, would that motivate you to do such malicious things?
Oh yeah.
And I guess it was effective in that way. And I guess that's one thing too, kind of helping us segue with transitions also. I'm sorry, not transitions, helping us segue with finales, not just a finale at the end of a season or the end of a franchise or whatnot, but at the end of an episode.
Oh, yeah.
Because each if you actually, I remember when I was a kid, I listened to the commentary for Batman the Animated Series, and Bruce Timm and the writers and directors and stuff on the project, they called each episode a show. They called this by itself, one episode was considered a show because it pretty much had a beginning, middle, and end, had 3 acts. It was an entire show, a whole production. And so it's not just about how do you have an ongoing storyline that meets expectations, but how do you get a single 22-minute or even an hour for Breaking Bad? How do you get a single episode of a show to have a finale that really hits hard or have some kind of a climax that really matters? And it's definitely an art form to it. It's definitely a craft. But I think lots of times what happens with shows is, especially now, but you want to deliver on some kind of a big climax within that episode, but also tee up further episodes or the ongoing season. Like Dexter, one of your favorite shows, also was good for that as far as having kind of an ongoing like a hanging thread. Like you had to come back for more to see what else would happen.
Yeah.
Lost was infamous for this, and they dropped the ball on it. But it was.
Yeah, I started watching Lost, and I think I got maybe halfway through the second season, something like that, and it just got to the point where I was like, I'm done. I can't. There is too much going on, and they were answering certain they would answer mysteries that they had set up, but then they would create 4 more. Yes, and it was just the fact that it was exponentially growing of mystery, and it was just like, I'm done. Yes. I'm done. I can't. Yes. I don't have the wherewithal.
No, and that's the worst part is when shows. There's something called something known as Chekhov's gun in the writing circles. I'm sure Nate knows what it is. Nate has several guns, but Chekhov's gun is basically the idea that if you see 2 characters in a room and there is a gun either on the table or mounted on the wall, and it's just sitting there the entire conversation, somebody better use that gun. Otherwise, the audience is going to feel cheated and slighted. Because it's the idea that you setting something up and not paying it off. Okay? And oftentimes the best shows or the best movies, the best series find a way to present something and then pay it off later on.
Yeah.
The best example in our lifetime would probably be Captain America in the Endgame.
Yeah.
That moment where he, spoiler alert, the moment where he gets bananas with that hammer. It was the single biggest payoff for 10 years of our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so what happens oftentimes in shows like Lost or other crazy banana shows that don't quite know where they're going or what they're doing is they will set something up, something that will get your curiosity going really, really hard. Something that you can't help but want to get invested in and want to come back over and over and over again to see how it resolves itself. And when they don't pay it off at all, or they pay it off in a way that is unsatisfactory to the fans, that's when you have a problem on your hands. That's when the finale doesn't succeed, and that's when people get kind of irate or whatnot. I'm trying to think of a great example. You mentioned obviously Lost has some of those in there, but there's other examples too.
Well, another show that tended to do this from time to time, and it actually got canceled because of it, was that show Carnivale that I
that you loved.
Yeah, I love that show. I absolutely love that show. But the problem is, and I recognize its faults. It was very. I think it would have thrived in today's culture because in the Netflix thing where everything drops at once.
Yes.
The problem was that it was released back in like 03, 04, where and back when it was still a weekly thing, and it had a very, very slow burn. Yeah, it was a very slow burn, and but it had a fascinating storyline and mythos, and I really enjoyed that, and it really drew me in. Because I'm not a big fan of carnivals and circuses and all that. Like, in fact, I didn't think I would like the show at all. But they did hit some beats that I really enjoyed. So it just pulled me right in, and it got canceled at the end of its second season.
Yes.
And it was unfortunate because they had set up all these clues, and you were like, oh, this is going to be great. And then they found out that they were going to be canceled, so they had to try to tie up as many as they could.
Not fair. Yeah.
So what ended up happening, the way I explain it to people, is that the series finale essentially of the end of season 2 was they did answer a ton of questions in the last 15 minutes. Like they tied it up, and like it was great. It was like, oh wow, they've tied up a ton of stuff. This is fantastic, cool. And then in the last 5 minutes, they opened up like 7 threads.
Oh, of course.
And it was like, oh my god! They just completely took those away.
Right. It's almost like a little bit of a FU to HBO as far as like, hey, in case you're curious, producer HBO, what happens? You'll never know because we're taking our ball and going home.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because it's gone away. And we're never going to know how it ends.
No, but I don't blame you for that. I don't blame you for that at all. Mm-hmm. Another thing that you made me think of too was with shows like Carnivale. Obviously, it was. It was meant to be, they intended on it being several episodes, several seasons to set things up, to build things up and let things play out as intended. And sometimes it happens where shows get canceled so early in their runs that before they expected for it to get canceled, they know what to do. Like Firefly as one that's as well known. Now that was a show that was more episodic. However, there were individual storylines as far as the characters themselves, the things, their own personal journeys that they're going through that people wanted to see kind of play out more or see how they would develop. One of them was between Malcolm, and Anara, the woman, the beautiful woman. People were wondering would they ever become something. People were wondering what happened with Wash and Zoe, or all these kind of things that would happen. And the movie that came out, Serenity, did kind of answer some of these questions. It did deal with some of these things, but at the same time, just about every person that enjoyed that show felt like, of course, because it was canceled after only 12 episodes, so many things were just left unresolved. Yeah. And that wasn't really on the fault of the producers or showrunners, but it's one of those things where it was a finale left, unsatisfactorily.
Yeah, and then and that's a shame when that happens, and unfortunately, in cases like Firefly and Carnivale, I think as well. They were just kind of ahead of their time.
Yes.
If they had been created and released just 2, 3, 4 years later, I think they would have succeeded because they would have been in a different like because Firefly, I think the biggest thing it suffered from the same thing that Freaks and Geeks suffered from, which is it hit before geek culture did.
Right before.
Yeah, it was right before. In fact, a part of it, like it was the
kind of catalyst. Yeah,
it was the catalyst. Yeah, it was the catalyst of geek culture. Part of the catalyst, and because it was in that time, it just kind of died in the birth of geek culture, which is a shame.
But it's a shame, but also it's one of those things where now, because of geek culture, we can kind of look back on those shows like Freaks and Geeks and Firefly with reverence, and they actually celebrate them almost like they were martyrs that kind of they died to pave the way for other shows and other movies and series and things that come out. You mentioned also with Netflix how Netflix has a thing where they have with binge culture now they can release 10 episodes, release a full season of a show.
Uh-huh.
So that way, in some capacity, you can get some kind of a resolution within at least that season.
Yeah.
Even if it gets canceled, doesn't have to come out for a second season, it's fine. The showrunners pretty much took care of it so that the first season, one season would tell one story, more or less. There may be a cliffhanger, but at least you'd be satisfied on some level.
Yeah.
And that's something that they didn't do before with other shows. It wasn't because they weren't intending for them to be, they weren't meant to be a binge culture.
Yeah.
And now they are. So it's a different thing.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because like in situations where you have like Netflix where it's complete everything's being dropped at once, that means the entire season. I know this seems like an obvious thing to mention, but the entire season was produced.
Right.
So like in the situation like we mentioned Lost before, like I remember reading how the producers and the showrunner and the writers for that show, they were writing like episodes, like 3 episodes ahead of what they were recording.
Yes.
So it literally
they did not know.
Yeah, they didn't know what the hell they were doing and where they were taking it. Where when you take a show like the new show on Netflix that just dropped recently called Dead to Me, which I'm hearing fantastic things about.
Christina Applegate and
Linda
Cardellini.
Cardellini, yeah.
Linda Italian name.
Yeah, Linda Italian, who interestingly was in Freaks and Geeks as well.
She was, you're right. And she was Hawkeye's wife.
Yeah. I remember the end. She was Velma in Scooby-Doo.
Well, now we're getting deep.
And she is the reason why I really like Velma now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Put
your pants back on, please.
You know the rules.
I apologize.
What the hell was I talking about?
So I think you're talking about the binge culture.
Oh yeah, the binge culture. Like Dead to Me, the entire season had to be written, produced, and put out there so they had to know what the finale of the season was. See how I tied it back to finale? So they had to know what the finale of the season was before they even did it. Where with The Lost, they didn't even know how the season would end when they started recording it.
They had no clue.
And so
even within the episodes, because I'm sure you know too about Lost, how that originally the way they intended for that pilot episode to go was that spoiler alert for an episode that they made. What am I doing? Anyways, not spoiler alert, jerks. Originally the pilot episode of Lost was supposed to end, or I guess 3/4 of the way through it, Jack would die. Jack was supposed to be in the plane dying or what have you. And Kate was supposed to take over as kind of the leader, the de facto leader of the entire show. And what happened was when they were doing, I guess, early screeners for the producers or whatnot, they liked Matthew Fox too much to kill him off, and they decided to go ahead and keep him on the show.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, it's similar to Jesse Pinkman. Pinkman on Breaking Bad was supposed to die off in the first or second episode.
Oh yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because you mentioned that.
But anywho, the idea was just that they were kind of, it's a show, apropos, another German word. They were kind of lost as they were creating and writing things.
Yeah.
That's fine sometimes, but it does tend to be a more seamless, well-structured production when you have a beginning, a middle, and an end in mind. A lot of my writing, I think I told you to you before, Nate, a while back. I do a lot of reverse engineering with my writing. I think of the ending first a lot of times, and then work my way back from there as far as how would I get to that point. Like for example, with Slade and Ash, I knew exactly how I wanted that book to end years before I got to it, and then I kind of made sure I got to that point. So it made it easier for me. I did the same thing with Ipswich. That's a long series, but I did the same thing with that. It just makes things a lot clearer in my mind. Which also brings up another thing. It does go the other way sometimes too, where I'm sure you've seen the Matrix movie.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen the sequels?
Yeah.
There's that side. We need to get that guy back in here to play the violin, the sad somber tones. So what happened there was the Wachowskis, they had an amazing movie and story in mind, and they put it out there to the fullest extent. And they were done. they went home and they drank their milk. And then it turned out Warner Bros. Like, hey, man, this movie made all kinds of cash. We need more movies. In fact, we need 2 more movies. And they're like, we literally don't have any more ideas. We're drinking milk at home. And so the Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions kind of show that they didn't exactly know what else to do. As far as they were concerned, Neo flying off at the end of part 1 was their ending.
Yeah.
And when they were forced to come up with 2 more movies, they were like, I don't know. How about a rubber man fighting a guy in the park named Smith with 100 of them? What am I supposed to do here? A whole bunch of drones flying through in the third movie as Lawrence Fishburne and J.D. Pinkett Smith make out for some reason. Clearly that's another example of things where, like kind of like Lost, if you don't know what your end game is, it's oftentimes not going to play out. The best extent.
That. Oh, geez, yeah. Those movies. I honestly feel sad when I think of those films because it was like I remember how amazing The Matrix was.
Yes,
like as I remember my brother-in-law. I went over to my sister's house and he said, "You've got to see this movie." And unfortunately, the one sad thing is that a buddy of mine had seen the movie in the theaters, and he told me
spoiled everything.
Well, he didn't spoil everything, but he did. I guess it could have been considered a spoiler. He told me that it was all about like they were in a matrix. Like
so it was a spoiler, not necessarily.
It wasn't like the big spoiler, but because because a lot of people said that the most amazing thing about that film was the fact that like you're watching this movie, you think it's a normal movie, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, they're like
it's one big simulation.
Yeah, that's one big simulation and all that. And he told me all about that before I saw it, so I was kind of expecting it.
Jeez, what a friend!
So, yeah. Well, I won't go there. But anyways,
this is your sister's friend, was it?
No, it was my friend.
Oh, okay.
Mickey will know who I'm talking about.
Okay.
But I won't say his name. John. Anyway,
you also say Mickey. I'm not sure what that means, but
yeah, my very good friend who listens to the podcast, Mickey. He will know exactly who I'm talking about, and he will probably be laughing when he hears it. But the thing is with that film is, but I remember how amazing that was just to see those things and see those amazing things that happen. And then in the other 2 movies, and it's just like, oh God.
Yeah, it's.
But that being said, but to flip it back to finales that they knew where they wanted to go before they got there, I think probably one of the biggest examples of that is Harry Potter.
Okay.
J.K. Rowling knew from the get-go where she wanted it to end up. She kind of knew. It wasn't I'm not totally sure if she knew about like the full battle and everything that would happen.
Yeah, it's my understanding that she had a rough idea and an outline more or less for the 7th book, whatever it was.
Yeah, but I think one of the most important things that she knew is she knew the storyline of Harry, obviously main character, but the whole thing with his parents, his mother dying for him, and Snape.
Clear.
Which and in fact I think that's one of my favorite stories of how Rickman got on board to play Snape.
Sure.
He actually wasn't. He was kind of like, I don't know if I really want to do this film. This is a huge commitment. It's going to be like the next 15 years of my life.
Yeah.
And then she said, well, I'll tell you a secret. Right. And then she reveals to him that he actually loved Harry's mother, and he and the whole thing of he's actually protecting Harry through the whole thing. And Rickman went, oh, I like that. And that actually pulled him in, and then he had to keep that a secret.
Well, but at the same time, because I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I'm aware of them, and I've seen them before. For geek credit, I had to watch all of them. Mm-hmm. But knowing that too, if you go back and watch Alan Rickman's performance too, it's a performance where having that with that knowledge, the knowledge that he is who he is, it does it leans to the idea of, I am a person who, even though I don't necessarily care as much about you, Harry, I loved you. I did care for your mother. That's why I'm begrudgingly making sure that you're always okay. It helped dictate his performance too. Yeah. So that knowledge definitely is shown. It comes across on the screen in a subtle way, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's just amazing, and it's a testament to his acting abilities.
Yeah, it's really, I agree with that.
And but it's also just a testament to J.K. Rowling as well in the fact that she was able to weave Like I actually think we were talking about the Avengers Endgame and had anything
Wait,
like
we
that.
talked about Avengers Endgame on this podcast?
Yeah, just once or twice, a minute. But
Golden Girls.
Yeah. Magic the Gathering. Anime. But we talked about like had there ever been a movie event as Endgame, and I think there actually was that we didn't mention, and that was the Harry Potter series.
To some extent, I guess part of it is
not on the same scale, but it was in the same vein.
Yeah, yes, in same vein. I'll give you that too. I mean, the box office and everything else. But I guess what it was too with Harry Potter was, in its own world, the final film or the final films, they did deliver to the most part. As far as the big finale for all this investment you had as far as the books and going on with these kids growing up and with all these films over all these years, the final films or film even did deliver. And that was the biggest thing. With the Marvel, with the MCU, did Endgame deliver for a vast majority of people? Yes, it did deliver. The finale did deliver. Yeah. And that's kind of, I remember in my screenwriting class I had forever ago, a student asked the teacher, what's the most important part of a script? Is the beginning, middle, the end? And he said, without batting an eye, he said the end. The end is all that matters in a way, because there's plenty of movies you can think about. If you watch the beginning, they may be boring or not make sense. Watch the middle. Almost all the second acts in movies, the middle kind of drags at some point or another, or things kind of get long. There's all kinds of weird subplots. But if the end really hooks you, it doesn't matter. Star Wars is a movie that's praised beyond all reason. But if you think about it, Star Wars, if it didn't have that finale that it has with the whole Death Star getting blown up, that movie wouldn't nearly be as effective as it is. Or Jaws. Yeah,
and one thing I wanted to bring up to you, because I think is a slight digression. I know, surprise you are.
You gotta be kidding me.
And I'll actually link to it.
To our digression page.
To that digression page.
It's the biggest part of our podcast.
There's a YouTube channel called Fix It and Post.
Oh.
And what they did was they took the fight scene of Darth Vader. I just saw it today. Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. Holy hell! They redid it like the way it should, like the way it probably should have happened. Right. And it is it is now my headcanon. It is now the way that fight went down.
Much more exciting.
Oh yeah, I'll show it to you after we're done recording. It's amazing, and I'll probably even throw it up on our video too and link to it, because holy crap, was it amazing!
Yeah, hopefully they're watching it right now as we're talking about it. But that's interesting that you mentioned it, because I get the idea it's meant to be more impactful emotionally, but obviously Allen Guinness and Proust was in a big suit. He couldn't really see that well in, and Allen Guinness didn't know how to actually fight that well. So it was meant to be. It was a lot slower than it was in preceding films. But like you're saying, if they kind of quote unquote fixed it in post,
oh man, it's amazing. It's like I was watching, I was like, oh my god, this is how it should have happened. And they even like splice in real movie footage and everything. But
I'm not trying to poo-poo all over Star Wars or Jaws, because they're great. They're great films. Yeah. But what we remember the most about those movies are the endings. For example, one of my favorite lines in any film of all time is the climax in Jaws, where Roy Schneider is out there. He's literally on a sinking ship. He's in the crow's nest. As it's going down, he has a rifle. And I know it's impossible to do it. The Mythbusters proved it. But he's on top of the crow's nest firing bullets at this gigantic shark as it's coming at his face. And he's firing it missing. And that tank that he put in there forever ago, set up and payoff, is coming at him, and he sees it, and he says the greatest catchphrase of all time, "Smile, you son of a bitch." So much, you read my comic book. He says the same thing. He says, "Smile for the birdie." I took it right from there. I'll admit it right now. There. And he
you heard it here first.
Yes, plagiarism. It's real. But he fires that bullet, and it blows up. He says, "Smile, you son of a bitch," hits the gas tank and blows him up, and it's a great, spectacular finale. It's and it also, at this point, he's by himself in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. He's like at best case scenario, I kill this shark and probably drown out here in the middle of nowhere, but at least I kill this shark. Yeah. And I love that. And it's a similar thing with Star Wars. That wouldn't work if Luke wasn't anatomy to the wall at the very end with no headset on, having to use the Force, get one shot off as Vader's coming right down at him, as Han Solo barely saves him, spoiler alert for Star Wars, and getting that massive Death Star to blow up. It's those moments, those finales that really make those movies as a whole work.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because the like if you look at like the prequels,
if you have to look at them,
what's the first one? Phantom Menace. the interesting thing with that is the finale there was Duel of the Fates, and you had the combination of the fight scene with the star battle. And unfortunately, while the fight scene I think was pretty amazing,
I agree.
It had I don't know, like the ending of that battle of the fight didn't have I don't know, it just didn't have the same impact.
The star battle or the lightsaber battle?
The lightsaber battle. It didn't have the same impact.
Yes.
And the star battle had it was just it was bizarre.
Yeah.
It was they were trying to take the no headset, get one shot off using the Force to the nth degree with the kid just blasting stuff and everything, and it just didn't seem to work.
No, it's like a video game. The battle in space, like a video game. Like almost like a parody or a farce.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, as we mentioned before, even though I love the music that was used in Duel of the Fates, it's called Duel of the Fates, and how Darth Maul looks amazing and everything. He doesn't say a single line in that fight.
Yeah.
And he doesn't talk at all, barely in the movie, because Ray Parks had an accent. They didn't like it for some reason, which is insane to me. But so there's almost no and also the way it seems, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have absolutely no idea who this guy is or why he's trying to fight them.
Yeah.
So there's no emotional impact there. Even though the Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader fight in Episode 4 is very they're two old men fighting and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's still definitely emotional weight, and you can feel it there. And when Obi-Wan dies, spoiler alert, you feel a little bit of something. You feel something there.
Yeah.
With this fight, it's like it looks interesting. It's lots of great flash, but there's no real substance to really get a hold of. And I felt something for Obi-Wan when he watched Qui-Gon die, but at the same time, their relationship wasn't all that impactful either. I mean, I didn't really know what to make of it. So it's one of those scenarios where it's kind of just that, like you said, that finale, it wasn't quite spectacular enough in the right ways.
Yeah, it was weak. It didn't have they didn't build the foundation to make it work.
Yes. Which not to cut you off, but I mean, just real quick, if you look at that compared to Return of the Jedi, which also had a battle in space and also a battle between sabers at the same time with Luke and his dad, that fight, even though the choreography isn't nearly as spectacular as with Darth Maul and whatnot, it's it's all emotion. You even have the emotional like opera singing as they're battling each other. It's very dark, and you see Luke once Vader mentions his sister, he goes crazy. It's like that's a very emotionally rooted battle. It's almost like a battle of the souls in lots of ways, and it comes across, and it's amazing. And of course, when Luke cuts off Vader's hand, it's like it's all coming for a circle, and there's so much in there. And it's effective. It does hit you, and also seeing the idea that Luke, by doing that, he's giving in to that darkness. And it's kind of, as a fan who's been invested in his character since the three movies more or less now. Yeah, it's doing its job. It was a well structured story.
Not to digress again, but
no.
In the Force Awakens, I think they did a good job with the finale there. Though the one thing, I illustrated this with the Endgame spoiler verse talk where I said, it'd have been really funny if they do that thing where they go and they get the stones, they kill Thanos in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then the rest of the movie is them just effing around for the whole time. Right. I have those thoughts in almost every movie where I think wouldn't it be funny if they just did this thing? And at the beginning of The Last Jedi, when she's holding out the saber, in my brain I said, wouldn't it be just funny if he just grabbed it and chucked it over his shoulder? And then he did.
That was your fault. That was your fault. You willed that. You willed all of that.
I went, whoa, they did it. And I don't know how I feel about that.
and then he said, wouldn't it be funny if all four of the girls fell in my lap right now? And they didn't. But yes, no, yeah. It's. I know what you mean as far as it's almost like, what's the most left field thing that a movie could do right now?
Yeah.
Because in a way, you were still kind of right. Sorry, Nate's sister, but you were kind of right with that prediction, because what happened was, the movie does open with them pretty much fighting Thanos in the first 10 minutes and cutting his head off. It's and cut. It's a scene. Roll credits. I don't. Yeah. So it's interesting to do.
Yeah, it was a strange take, but I did want to say one thing. You mentioned about how in with the ending. If you do a good ending, then they'll forgive you anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
That reminded me, there's actually a thing in theater where, and it's particularly musical theater, but where it's if you have a great beginning, at the very least an okay entr'acte, or not entr'acte, end of Act 1.
Sure.
And finale, they will forgive you everything else. If everything else in the show is crap, but those three events in the musical are knock your socks off.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to get some ire here, but not much because it's not.
Oh no!
There is a musical. It's called Wicked, and Wicked is interesting. I like it. I really do. I really do like it.
I haven't even seen it, but I know it's a very well liked.
Oh yes, I do like it. But if you look at the middle bits,
we only have so many listeners. Are you trying to get rid of all of them?
I know Lisa's probably going to come and break my neck.
Yeah, she is.
But the thing is that those middle bits, they're not the best. Like Popular's a good song. Sure. Popular's a popular song.
Okay.
All that. But the initial song, the oh my God, Defying Gravity, which is the end of the first act,
Preach.
One of the best songs. Lisa, I hope you forgive me. This redeems me. One of the best songs I have ever heard in a musical. Like I remember, I was sitting there in my honeymoon watching.
Yeah, that's
this.
right. You were sick on your honeymoon in New York, crying during this.
Yes, I was.
I remember that.
This is the best
I remember that.
I've ever
Yeah.
seen. Tissues, not because of crying, but because I was sick. I was still crying, but it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And then the finale is just like, oh, knock your socks off.
So you're saying as your own factor in this experiment of yours that for you, because those main three songs more or less were so hit you so out of the park that you thought you were left the theater thinking, this was a great production. Overall, it's great. I would thumbs up for it because they nailed those things.
Yeah, same thing happened to me in Ragtime. Like I went to see Ragtime at Heritage Theater Festival, and it was like I wasn't even going to stay for the whole thing. Like I was like, I don't even know what the hell about this. And I get there, and they just bam, and it was amazing. So it's very true. It's interesting how in theater you need to have those other components.
Yes.
Where in a movie they'll forgive you more, but I think with a movie, because it's obviously different medium, has different requirements essentially. But
well, also you can watch a movie these days. Watch a movie at home and kind of fast forward or skip to the part you want to see. Here's something that you got ire for that. I'm gonna get some ire for this.
Okay.
I enjoy all the Jason Bourne films except for the last one. But the second one, which is kind of my favorite, is also one that's kind of the weirdest one. But the Bourne Supremacy. So my best friend Susan's gonna hate me right now, but she'll get over it eventually. But that movie is kind of slow in lots of parts, and the action doesn't really then sing. But I love the ending to no end. If you remember the ending, and I'll show it to you after this.
Since I've seen it,
I'll show it to you this while I'm watching the battle between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader Redux. I'll show you the battle between Matt Damon and Carl Urban. And the way it is that Matt Damon's in a taxi cab, and Carl Urban's in a big old, like I think it's a Range Rover or a land, one of those big SUVs that's in Europe, and it's a car battle. And there's no CGI. It's all just it's all just like Paul Greengrass going bananas, filming these two cars battling each other through the streets of Berlin or some crazy Eastern European place.
I think I do remember that scene. Yeah.
But it's amazing.
It's an awesome scene.
It's amazing. It's the last 10 minutes of the movie, and because of that thing, I saw the movie 3 times in theaters just for that one amazing battle.
Oh yeah.
So it's the idea that it's almost like Andy Davis, our mentor and Lord Supreme ruler in improv, has always said that if people, the overall impression a person will have of the production or whatever they've seen or whatever they've experienced will be the last 10 minutes, because it's the last thing that it's what you're going out on. It's the last thing that will linger in your mind, essentially. Yeah. So if you go out on a high note, that high note will kind of carry the most weight with them. Yeah. Same as a date. If you go on a date with, trust me, if you go on a date with somebody, if you go on a date with somebody and you come late, you don't have quite as much money as you thought you did. You bring her a food she's allergic to. Sorry, Deborah. And it turns out you call the wrong name more than once. As long as you find a way to make it up to her at the end, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Most things will be forgiven. You could edit most of that out.
I'm getting the impression that these are actual experiences.
Yeah,
Would you like to explore that further? Ethan?
Oh, look at the time. We have to go milk a cow.
Hey, we got some right out back.
We do. We are in the middle of absolute nowhere.
Yeah, it's my son calls them cow friends. Cow friends are sleeping. Anyway,
Cow friends.
Yes, they're hamburgers, son.
But they're not pork because Daddy don't like pork.
No. Nope.
I feel so bad for your kids. A baconless childhood is no childhood at all.
But
we digress.
Oh, but we digress. We digress all the time.
Yes. One last thing before we go, because I know you're getting older. Twists. We have to at least acknowledge twists.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually just looking. I was reading about a movie that I haven't thought about in years, but it was a good movie. The Others.
Oh yeah, that was the Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, yeah. And that movie, it's a 18-year-old movie, so spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. Yes.
But the movie is it's a thriller. It's not and it essentially is a ghost story, haunted house movie, and very spooky, ethereal, very interesting. And what I love about it is the twist at the end is that Nicole Kidman and her two children, they are the ghosts.
Yes,
and I remember that
we're seeing the story from their point of view.
Yeah.
Which is unusual as far as ghost stories go. Yeah,
because see, for them, the real people are the ghosts. Like you don't realize this. No. You think the real people are actual ghosts.
Yeah.
But it ends up they are the ghosts. And it's very like a lot of like some people criticize it because they were like, it's essentially Sixth Sense. But
not really.
Yeah, not really. Like it was actually like while Sixth Sense from a technical standpoint handled that twist very well. Like, you go back through that movie and you see he doesn't interact with anybody except for that kid.
Yeah.
But in the Others, they weren't going for that. They were going for a completely different
tone.
And man, was it good. And it was a twist you did not see coming.
No one saw it coming. Yeah. No one did. And what's funny too is how it's one of those things too, again, talking about Chekhov's gun and set up some payoffs. In order for a twist to work or be effective, you have to, in some capacity, set it up properly. There have to be enough breadcrumbs that add up, so at the end, when the twist comes, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or I can go back and watch the movie again and follow the thread and say, okay, yeah, that lines up.
Yeah.
And the Others, they do a great job of it. There's several times. I remember one thing. Because I've only seen it once actually, but I remember her husband was Daniel Craig, I believe.
Yeah.
And he came back from war. And the idea was he was a soldier that died in the war, and he comes back, and the whole time he's there, he's questioning. He's like, something's off, something's wrong here. He keeps questioning things. He's like, how did I survive? And all these other kind of things. He's pretty much poking the idea that I didn't survive the war, yet I can see you, and you can see me. Something's off here. So then in the end, it's like, okay, they're all dead, not just him.
Yeah.
So it adds up. Another one too, like you mentioned, Sixth Sense. How there's so many clues. And if you go back and watch it, you realize, wait a minute. Bruce Willis never did talk to. We assumed he talked to other people, but he never did, not even once. And there's ones too, like we're gonna get into all kinds of spoilers for big old fashioned twists. But in Fight Club, the biggest breadcrumb in Fight Club isn't the obvious stuff.
Yeah,
it's the simple, smaller things. The idea that you see like little blips on the screen of Brad Pitt's character flashing in long before he actually meets him, or you see things that are the way the narrator talks is almost like it's clear that he's out of his mind a bit.
Yeah.
So anything he's saying to you is off kilter. So when you actually see what he sees, as opposed to just we're seeing the whole movie through his perspective, and because he has a crazy lens on, we're seeing it through crazy eyes. But once we see the real world, the way the real world actually was, we're seeing how insane he looked to everybody else.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. So it's handling that kind of a handling twist requires a deft hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're risky because, and I think this is probably one of the biggest complaints about twists like The Others, or even just M. Night Shyamalan's entire movies. is the fact that like they don't really have much rewatchability. Like you watch it the first time, you get the twist. Whoa! You watch it the second time to verify. Like, oh, okay, this, and then you probably never revisit it because now you know how it ends, and it's not like it almost. For some people, sure. And it depends. Like the others, I think is one they did it in such a way that the revisiting it is interesting because it's not only the destination, it's the journey. Sure. Where with Sixth Sense, it's because it was from a technical perspective. It just doesn't have it. It just doesn't have the same level of rewatchability. Sure. In my opinion.
No, that's fine.
But I do think that's true of his other movies as well, like Unbreakable and what's the one in the woods?
You're thinking of so there's Signs and The Village.
The Village and Signs. Well, The Village and Signs, both of those, they're not even worth watching once, in my opinion. But
no, so I'm not a fan of either of them either. But I know some people do, for whatever reason, that's fine.
Yeah, if you enjoy movies,
if you enjoy Wicked, Nate doesn't know how or why, but Nate says go and watch it.
Yeah.
But the thing, another one is Vertigo. Have you seen the Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo?
No, actually, I haven't. That's
okay. So long story short, I want to spoil it for you, but so the idea was it used to be like AFI's like #1 movie for a while, a couple of years ago, or whatnot. I'm pretty sure it's gone out like #7, but it's still really high up there. Anywho, what it did was Alfred Hitchcock was good at doing twists as well, and he would find a nice way to make sure that it came out of nowhere, but at the same time made sense.
Yeah.
And Vertigo is an example of a really, really hard twist. That movie takes a hard left turn, but it does make enough sense that you're like, okay, I can believe this, and you will go back and watch and be like, wow, that's a lot of of wishful thinking on this for this plan to work. There's a lot of alignment that had to happen with the moon and the whole solar system, but it pays off. So it's definitely one of those. I think with twists, like you said, with twist movies, you're gonna watch it at least twice.
Yeah.
To really appreciate the quote unquote finale at the end, to make sure it all pays off.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up Hitchcock because probably his most famous movie, Psycho, has a twist at the end.
Also that twist in the middle.
Well, yeah.
It's both. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's two twists. But what's interesting is that movie has, I would argue, infinite rewatchability because it's similar in the fact that it's not just the destination, it's the journey. Like the watching how well it's filmed and the story beats and the feelings that every aspect of that movie gives you makes it rewatchable. Where you get the twist of the mother at the end and you're just like, oh God,
right.
But it's like, oh, that's neat. Like, oh wow, that's crazy. Let's watch it again.
Right. It's a similar story with Usual Suspects, because Usual Suspects is a whole point where you realize that one of the characters is just is BSing more or less the whole time, and it's fun to rewatch it and see which elements of this BSing is actually happening and which ones probably didn't happen. So it may require more than 2 watches, but yeah, I think sometimes the ultimate, if there's one thing that anyone listening to this episode takes from it, other than the fact that Nate loves pork, is that a good ending, whether it have a twist or whether it have a big, huge denouement or whether it have a Death Star exploding, it needs to be earned in some way. The part of, you mentioned the journey, making sure that journey from the beginning to the end earns whatever happens at the end. If the hero does die, like in Breaking Bad, that his death is earned. If the hero survives and is triumphant and actually is crowned a king, like in a way like Harry Potter or whatnot, making sure that it's earned. If a person ends up blowing up several banks and setting the world's debt back to zero, like in Fight Club, making sure that that's in some capacity earned. The audience, like you said, we will give you a lot of leeway as long as you earn it along the way.
Yeah. There's really nothing I can add to that. I was going to add more to that, but I thought, you know what?
Sorry.
That's a good place to put a little dot on it. Okay, so that is finale. That's the finale.
Hey, that's our finale.
That's our finale. Finale. How many times can I say finale in a sentence? Anyway, let's mention this a bit of a sad piece of news. I don't know if we mentioned this last week. I will have to go back and listen to our episode. But yes, sad. Mayhew, Peter Mayhew, passed. Chewbacca, may he rest in peace. It was very sad, especially because you could tell he loved the fans. In fact, I remember I followed the Star Wars subreddit for a little while before it got dark after Last Jedi, and he was very interactive on there. In fact, it would be great. You would see somebody post something like their Chewbacca cosplay or something, and he would be the first comment. Not like the highest upvoted. It would be the first comment. No other comments, and him saying, "This looks great, wow," and like the person would be like, "I can die happy."
Right, of course. I mean, think about something too Peter Mayhew did, because his knees more or less were, because he's very tall and he had all kinds of knee problems for the last half of his life or so. And he pretty much was bound in a wheelchair for a lot of years. And then when they decided to do episode 7, or no, that's episode 7. They pretty much gave him Force Awakens. He was willing to get reconstructive surgery on his legs to be able to stand in the uniform, in the outfit again. That kind of commitment from an actor, especially this day and era, is very uncommon. And so that just goes to show how much he wanted to give to the fans. That's a great thing.
He was just a great actor, and just a really good all around good guy, and and the stuff his charity work and everything was just fantastic. And it was very sad to see that he passed. It just it's like, oh geez, we've lost Leia, we've lost Chewbacca. I've been a couple other folks that we've lost. I think was it the voice, or was it the guy who actually was in the suit of Admiral Akbar? We've lost a lot of the original folks, and it's getting sad as time goes on. But unfortunately, time forever marches on, and this kind of stuff will happen. So, anyways, rest in peace, Peter Mayhew. I wanted to just mention that real quick.
And if we mentioned it last time, well, we mentioned it again. Yeah,
we mentioned it again. And I guess I'm just going to do a really odd Mark Maron segue to this episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime.
As our sponsor slowly pulls the plug out of the wall.
I always love that when I listen to the WTF podcast and I'm listening to the beginning and like he goes into this. Like I remember there was one recently, a comedian unfortunately had passed away, had committed suicide, and Mark Maron goes into this really heartfelt tribute to this guy, and it was very true and heartfelt and sad, and I feel bad that I can't remember the guy's name. I'll probably drop in with it. But very sad, and like to the point where he was like almost crying, and then he was like, "Yeah, it's just so Godspeed, man." Today's episode is brought to you by, and he just dives right into a thing, and it's just like, okay. All right. Well, more power to you, Mark.
Excellent dismount. Way to
get them dollar bills. Anyway,
he's literally crying, has a tear coming up his eye as he's promoting the next dog food brand or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do you need a new website? Anyway.
Connor's breaking on you?
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, episode brought to you by Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime brings you anything that you need.
I can see your brain turning into tapioca, and then you trying to eat the tapioca with your hands.
It just it's like, man, I'm like Hannibal Lecter in that one. Oh God, who is that? Who is that? The guy that?
Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta.
Spoiler alert for Hannibal.
Yeah, Ray Liotta.
Not Silence of the Lambs. You can watch that, but Hannibal.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the movie, not the TV show. But anyways,
how dare you?
But yeah, so Amazon Prime brings you a lot of stuff for free. Fantastic. I actually just picked up a couple books this past week through Amazon Prime. And they were delivered very quickly.
Could you name even one of them?
Yes, Ravnica: War of the Spark, and
this is in real time. This is in real time.
Book organization stuff for people with ADHD. I think
neither of those are books.
Neither of those are books. I got the Fervor book.
What is on Amazon Prime is Hannibal, the TV series, all 3 seasons.
Oh, yes.
So while Nate's reading his fictional books that don't exist, you can actually watch a real show that does exist.
Yes. Well, the one book that does exist is the other one. I don't know if it exists yet. But the one book is Ravnica War of the Spark, and I actually finished it. I read it. I finished it. It was good. It was actually really good.
Audible applause.
Yes, audible applause. And Nicolas Cage went down.
Yeah, Nicobolas?
Yeah, Nicobolas. Yeah, he went down. Just very, very fun. I've mentioned that before. But anyways, okay, so we'll dismount off that. So is there anything you would like to plug, Sir Ethan?
Yes.
Like yourself.
How dare you? Yes, I would like to plug. I would like to plug that Mick and I will be at the upcoming convention. Oh my gosh, what's it called? It's not called Awesome Con. All Star Con, June 8th and 9th. I don't know where it's actually located, but that's not important. If you can obviously, Nate will have the actual website for that convention in the episodes, details and description and whatnot. So yes, it's June 8th and 9th, All-Star Con. Mick Bellwinkle and I will be there, and Nate might be there. It's a little surprise. Nate might be there. He might be there.
I might be able to make Sunday. It all depends on how much. The problem is that Nugget. These are my nicknames for my children. Nugget, sure. my daughter, she is actually graduating preschool, so I'm going to be an emotional mess, and then also her birthday party is that Saturday. Yes. So we'll see, but I will try. Yes. I will.
No, and that's fine. But what we're going to do if Nate can't be there is we're going to have a big old blown up image of his face and sit it on the table so you can look at it.
That is one of the last things the world needs right now is a massive thing of my face. Anyway, okay, anything else you'd like to plug?
Of course, the website, which is already on. And by the way, there are people that can actually get to this podcast through the website. So me promoting that website, when they've already found the podcast through the website, is redundant. And I thank you for putting up with it. Also like to promote Bricks, because Bricks has amazing pizza. We go there for buy one, get one after 10 o'clock, and they have all kinds of very nice waitresses who I've kind of dated more than one, which is a problem. But other than that, Nate, do you have anything to promote?
Yes, I do. Actually, real quick before I dive into one thing I'm unplugging, unfortunately.
Oh no,
I haven't mentioned this. So actually, I'm not doing the stream. I mentioned a couple times I was doing weekly streaming on Wednesdays. I'm actually stopping that for Magic the Gathering.
Sorry.
Part of the big reason for that is because it's just not fun. It's fun. It's fun playing Magic the Gathering, but then I sit there and realize that I've been playing the game for 10 minutes and not saying anything to anybody who potentially could be watching. And I realized, I really don't want to have to do that every week. So I'm cutting that. But this actually helps out the podcast a little bit, because I'm thinking of turning that into the Creativity in Progress streaming thing.
Yes.
So we might be streaming stuff on there, like maybe podcast recordings and other such fun things. We'll be throwing that up there. So that's keep up for that down the line. And
because one thing we had talked about before is how it'd be kind of fun if you were to try to teach a noob like myself how to play Magic the Gathering on that stream.
Yes.
And watch as the world laughed at me and chastised me for being a noob. So
well, the nice thing is they actually just set up a really good new player run.
Sure.
And you play against Sparky. Which
is it a real person or
no? It's AI. But so we'll start there. We'll start just slow. But I like that, and so we definitely could do that.
Anyways, Nate's sister and my best friend Susan. The takeaway is, without me, Nate just gets sad.
Exactly. So I need more Ethan in my life. Oh. Like so many people do, especially the single ladies in the world.
Good night, everybody.
I wanted to bring that up. Also wanted to mention good friend of the show, Stephen Weiscarver. He's going to be launching a podcast very soon. And I'm helping him do that. And that it will be called The Lunch Break. And so it's going to be very funny.
Yes.
It's going to be a bit blue. So it's just him giving us some comedy goodness. So,
but it will have Nate's editing skills. Nate's a very good editor, obviously. So if you enjoy a high production valued podcast, Nate's thumbprints will be all over it.
Thank you, sir. But that's going to be coming. So that's going to be awesome. And there was one other thing. Oh, yes, YouTube. We have our YouTube channel is live.
Holy crap. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
I should have gotten a haircut.
Yep. So we have one video up there. It's actually a little chunk of the podcast that we recorded last week that will be dropping the day after this record. So dropping on the 14th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the podcast that recorded on the 14th, there is a video of that. Actually, by the time you're listening to this, you'll probably see a little bit of a video from this podcast.
Okay.
Because we're kind of dropping those a little bit ahead of time, so that way you can get a little bit more of us in your life. And also, we'll be releasing the full podcast on the channel as well. So you can see those. So that's exciting stuff. Very fun. You can find me at nathanbeattyvo.com, my website, nathanbeattyvo.com. You also can go to, as Ethan said, echelongnovels.com. You can click on podcast and you can sign up for our newsletter. You can call us at 434-481-1787. And you can email the podcast directly at creativityinprogresspodcast@gmail.com. Finally, you also can submit to us.
Yes.
Submit to us.
Bend over and
oh God. You can
I completely broke him. His brain is tapioca.
You can donate.
There you go.
That was the word
That's
that was not coming up
There
in
you
my
go.
thesaurus. Go to patreon.com/creativity in progress podcast if you wanted to donate to the podcast. And I did realize something. I did forget to do something very important.
About Alan Rickman? Oh, it's about Alan Rickman.
Not Alan Rickman. It's...
What's more important than Alan Rickman?
It is...
And we're leaving this in, by the way.
Oh, yeah, leaving it all in. We have a caller.
Holy Jesus.
We have a caller.
You almost forgot that?
I almost forgot we had a caller.
Professional to the
so
end.
I'm gonna go ahead and play this. We got a caller real quick. And again, you can call us at
at numbers. You can call us at numbers.
Call us at numbers. You call us at 434-481-1787, just like this caller did, and let's hear what they have to say.
I was just wondering, how do you keep certain characters' dialogue the same throughout the whole story? Like the way they talk and all that.
All right.
Cool.
Okay.
Do not know who that was.
Not sure who that was.
But we thank you very much, Anonymous, for calling in.
Yes.
And if you want to say your name when other people call in at 434-481-1787, you can give us your name if you want, or you can do what this fine person did and just ask your question. So, Ethan, what would you like to answer the question?
I would like to answer a question. So he was asking about how to keep dialogue. It seems like he was asking how to keep dialogue consistent with characters through the story. And the easiest answer I can give is to imagine that the character is in fact real. And the best way to do that is to take the time to actually really focus in off the page, really focus in on who the character actually is. Think about the characters inside and out as far as like what their normal routine is, what they like to eat for breakfast, the kind of movies they like to watch, what the kind of people they're attracted to, the things that they do, things that make them laugh. Think of them as an actual, real, tangible, living, breathing character and give them a voice in some kind. They could give them actual personality as far as, are they kind of sarcastic? Are they kind of, are they very introverted or whatever they might be? And once you can hone in on who the character actually is, you'll see them so clearly that when you write for them, it'll flow just like it would for an actual person you know in your real life. Mm-hmm. If you can imagine them as a real person, writing for them will be that much easier.
Yeah, that's really great. That's something I do as well. Something else that I do, and this comes with the iteration of writing, is when you go back to do other drafts, I usually try to take a moment, and this can get difficult if you have a lot of characters, but I usually take scene by scene the characters and look at them individually, and I say, okay, this character said this and did this and did this. Is that true? Like would this character do this, or is this a plot device?
Is it true to the character?
Yeah, is it true to the character? And that's something that I try to do every time I write. And I try to do it as I'm writing, but at the same time, you sometimes need distance from the original writing to come back. Like I know when I was writing my novel, there did come a point where I was getting near the end, and I realized my main character, Joe, he was getting a little sloppy in the way he was reacting to things, because I realized, I had him react that way because I needed him to react that way to get from point A to point B, and that isn't true to the character. So I need to find another way to get to point B.
It was contrived.
It was contrived. So not only do I do what Ethan suggested, which is view the character and build the character separately, as a fully fleshed out real person in my imagination, I also look from a technical standpoint. I look at the actual writing and apply it to that character.
Yes.
So that's the other piece to it.
And just a real quick, I know we've been going long about this, but one real quick example of that is in the movie Justice League. There's a part where Batman gets knocked down by Superman, and Batman, while on the ground, makes a joke, pretty much to no one also. And it's kind of like, Batman doesn't make jokes, especially just for the audience. He's not Deadpool. So
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for calling in. We really appreciate
that.
Yeah, that was awesome. So finally, after all of that,
it's a long dismount, man.
Yeah, long dismount. But you know what? Kind of long digressions, long dismounts,
long goatees,
long
pork,
Well, speak for yourself. All right, well, that's about ties it for today. Our intro and outro music is the song Amigos by Platinum Bar.
Holy Jesus Christ on a stick with bacon grease. Oh, play the music. Play the drums. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yes,
man.
yes,
I am fully erect.
Yeah, well, when are you not?
Touche. I am sitting down.
Priapism's a bitch. Anyway, our intro and outro music is the song Amigos by Platinum Butterfly, copyright 2015, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0. You can find more of their stuff at dig.ccmixter.org, featuring Clarence Simpson and Susan. Oohs, ahs. Thank you much.
But not my best friend, Susan.
But not my best friend, Susan. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We really appreciate you listening today, and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Clarence Thomas. Oh, we have a phone call coming in. Was that from Angry Fan about how they love Wicked and hate Nate Beatty's face?
Ouch, Chief. Yes. Oh, who is this call? Oh, hello. You bastard.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Now, we didn't know that you were listening to the show.
Well, yes, I'm listening live. I do every week.
You're listening to the podcast we recorded a week ago live?
Yes. Don't ask me how.
I apologize.
It's my magic.
Well done, sir. Well done. Now you were saying that you love Wicked. The Wicked is your favorite show?
Yes, it is. My God, it's amazing.
Sir, I'm sorry. You're over. The emotions are overtaking you as you cry. As you cry.
I'm sorry. Oh. It's the vapors.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Nate has that effect on women or men. I can't tell what you are entirely.
Good. I don't want anybody to know.
Fair. So now you were saying that you wanted to actually perform one of the songs from Wicked yourself?
Yes, I'm going to do Defying Gravity and G.
I don't even know if G's a note, but here we go.
And that's over. We've lost the caller.
Oh, God, why? Technology, damn you, Alexander Graham Bell.
Oh, God, please don't send us much hate mail. Sincere apologies to the Paul End estate for whatever that was we just listened to.